All right, I'm very happy with this battery charger. It works as a standalone battery status checker powered by the battery. You have to provide your own USB power adapter. You want a 30-watt USB-C power adapter to get the full charging power out of it. But it's very nice. The single button interface to set the settings is a little hard to use. I would have wished they had 2 or 3 dedicated buttons for each feature, but it certainly wasn't too difficult to figure out and make happen. So I really like the ability to set the maximum charging point to something less than 100%. I wish every single charger had that feature, because I really like only charging my batteries to 80% for battery longevity purposes, unless I absolutely know I need to go all the way to 100% because I'm going to be using it for a really long shot or something. 3 slots should be plenty. You're only going to get the maximum charging rate if you do a single slot, but with 2 slots you're still getting like 12 watts each, and that's a little better than the typical charging rate on these guys, which is about 10 watts. So if you put all 3 in, you're getting 8 watts each, which is just slightly lower than your typical 10-watt charging rate, but it's not bad if you're doing all 3 at the same time. So, relatively low price for what you're getting. I'm very happy with this guy. This is a 3-port battery charger for the DJI Osmo Action Cam batteries. It'll work with the 3, the 4, or the 5 version batteries. So I was sent this to review for free. If you wanted to purchase it, it would cost you about $30 MSRP, although I've seen it on sale for as low as $19.99. They haven't paid me for my review, and my opinions remain my own. So in the box, we have a little manual booklet and the charger itself. So this charger is USB-C powered, and you will need to provide your own USB-C power supply to plug in there to charge it. Now it can work without a power supply just to check the battery. So if you plug a battery into here, it'll turn on, it's getting power from the battery, it's checking it and says, hey, this battery's already fully charged, it's at 99%. And so it has 3 different ports, and you can charge 3 different batteries independently. The specifications say that it can do up to 20-watt charging on a single port, but it's limited to 24-watt charging across all 3 ports. So if you put 3 batteries in and you have a full, a power supply that can do the full 24 watts, it'll do 8, 8, and 8. So on the bottom it has an anti-slip pad. It's a polycarbonate case, pretty translucent and clear. You can kind of see the components inside, and the batteries will power it for a little while. After they tell you, oh, it's at 99%, then just a couple seconds later it will turn off so it doesn't drain the battery. So there's a few options here, and they're all activated by pushing this button on the back. And so one of the options is you can set the state of charge stop point to be lower than 100%. So if you want to charge your batteries only to 80% to increase longevity of your battery life, you can say, okay, charge all these batteries only up to 80%. The other thing you can do is increase the charge power for a channel. So by default, they say it limits it to 10 watts, and that's the DJI factory charging profile. But if you want to fast charge your batteries, you can go higher than the 10 watts. If you go to 12 watts, you can only do 2 channels. You go to 20 watts, it basically will only charge in 1 channel. But you can, fast charge one of these batteries really quickly. That might degrade the battery a little faster. So it's not necessarily recommended you do that, but you have the option of turning on the fast charge mode. So it has a beginner assist feature, which basically means that if you unplug it and plug it back in, you do a power cycle, it'll reset to the default values. But if you save the settings 12 times, it'll stop doing that. So basically what it's saying is when you power cycle this, it goes back to the default values and you have to reset your preferred settings. But if you have set your preferred settings more than 12 times, it'll just remember that even through power cycles. So if you know, hey, I want to do a super fast 20-watt charge, but I want to stop at 80% state of charge, and you program that in, if you do that 13 times, it'll just remember that forever. And so to do that, you have to manipulate this button in various different ways. Okay, so this is a USB A to C cable, and the manual specifically says, hey, don't use an A to C cable because you'll have less than or equal to 15 watts of power here. So it has an indicator that says, hey, you're getting 5 volts in and your charging power is less than 15 watts. So if I flip over to a USB C-to-C cable with a USB-C power delivery charger, then it says, hey, look, I've negotiated up to the 9 volt level, which is what I prefer, and my charging power is greater than or equal to 24 watts. So it basically says, yes, your charger is providing everything I need to go. Now it has this little CP thing that says 10 watts, and that basically says, hey, my default power is 10 watts. That's 10 watts per channel. Now if I push and hold for like 2 seconds, this thing here starts flashing, and then I can change it from 100% to 90 or to 80, 70, 60, 50, 40. They have really low values here. I don't know why you'd want to go down to 20, but we're going to leave it at 80%. And so I am going to basically just let it sit there at 80% while that guy's flashing. And it has now set that up, and so it's remembered it, it's 80%. And so if I push this for 2 seconds, it'll say, hey, look, you're at 80%. Right, so if you single press the button, you can cycle through the charging power in watts, the battery voltage, the battery current, the battery cycle count, which is the number of times each battery has been cycled, the current battery temperature in Celsius or in Fahrenheit. There's a couple of icons to know. A big N is no battery, an hourglass is battery idle, lightning bolt is evaluating charge, check mark is battery is done charging, and if there's a thermometer it means there's a delay caused by the battery temperature getting too high. Alright, so with the battery plugged in, you can see here these 2 slots are empty and they're doing 0 watts. I'm charging 3 watts to this battery here, which is almost at 100%. So if I tap that button, that number changes to 4.45 volts or 0.58 amps or 0 cycle count. So this is a brand new battery. I've never ran it down, so it hasn't been cycled yet. We also have 25 centigrade or 77 Fahrenheit, which are the temperatures in centigrade and Fahrenheit. Alright, so if you want to set the charge power, it defaults to 10 watts. You can push for a couple of seconds, the stop light flashes. You push and hold for a couple more seconds, and the CP flashes. And now you can tap, go to 12 watts, 15 watts, 18 watts, 20 watts, or back down to 6 watts, 8 watts, and so forth. And so if I go up to 20 watts here, and then this guy stops flashing, it'll be set to quick charge batteries at 20 watts if there's only a single battery in there, and stop at 80%. Now my battery is already 100% and it has a little check mark. It says, hey, I'm done. So I need to run this battery down to demonstrate the rest of the functionality here. Alright, so just sitting here idle, this guy is drawing 1/3 of a watt. So it has a relatively minor draw just to display things. Now I have discharged this battery. I just did it. It's warm to the touch, so we'll see if there's any thermal issues here. I'm going to plug that in. And the watts are ramping up. And so it's currently at 9.7 watts. CP here is set to 10 watts. So I'm going to push the button on the back. We'll go past the stopping timer here and change this guy up to 20 watts. So I've waited a while. That's still at the 9.8 watts. I'm going to pull the battery out, plug it back in. The watts are ramping up. It's gone past the 10 watt rate. And now it's at 18.2 watts. So not quite 20, but close. Now the watt hour meter coming in says it's drawing about 18.35 watts. So it says it's delivering 18.1, 18.0, and it's drawing 18.2, 18.3. So it looks like it's delivering most of the power to the battery with a 1/3 of a watt to run the display and the electronics. Alright, the charger took 9 watt hours to fully recharge the battery to 100%. If it's a 4.45 volt battery at 1.95 amps, that's 8.6 watt hours, so it does look like the battery is pretty close to the claimed capacity. Alright, we're going to try this guy out again. So just plugging the battery in, it's powered by the battery. This battery is at 59%, so it's below 80%. I can pop through the different readings. I have 3.98 volts. It's not charging it, so 0 amps. This particular battery has a single charge-discharge cycle right now. It's at 25 centigrade or 77 Fahrenheit. Now, I am going to take the battery out, plug this guy in, and when you do that, it powers by itself, and we are going to push and hold the button for just a little bit, and the stop setting is currently at 100%. So I'm going to tap this thing twice. Now the stop setting is down to 80%. I'm going to push and hold, and now the power here is set to 10 watts. I'm going to turn that up to the maximum of 20 watts, and then I'm going to push and hold again. And so now we have the stop setting at 80% and the power is at 20 watts. So that is the setting. I'm going to plug this battery in. So it is charging the battery. The watts are ramping up. So right now it's charging the battery at 18.2 watts. So I've never seen it hit the full 20 watts, but it hits 18 out of the 20 watt rate. And so the battery's charging. If I tap the buttons, I can see, oh, it's up to 4.3 volts. It's delivering 3.7 amps. The charge cycle hasn't changed, and the temperature is currently still 77 F, although it just went up to 78 there. So we're going to let this guy charge and see if it really stops at the 80% level. Now this OLED screen seems to flicker in a camera view. In person it's basically solid and we're not seeing that flickering lines, with a human eye. So that's just an interaction between the refresh rate of the screen and the shutter of the camera. Alright, that worked exactly how it was supposed to. The stopping point is set at 80%. When it hit 80%, it drops down to 0 watts. And the battery is now mostly charged, but 80% level is a safer storage level for battery longevity. Now, if I tap the button, it's 4.2 volts. And the cycle count is still at 1 on this battery. I think it has to go all the way to 0 to 100% to count as a cycle. And since I was going from like 60 to 80%, I think it'll probably add up that as half of a charge cycle. And so if I do it again, it might go up to a full charge cycle.